So today this month we are asking you to think about trust. Today in particular, we will move into not so much thinking about trust, but actually trusting, as I'm going to ask you to trust me perhaps more than you already do. I hope you do some, and I'm going to ask for more. I might burn all of my trust points right here today. And also to trust each other in the room. We're not gonna do anything totally weird, so if I'm freaking you out, no blood will be spilled. And trust yourself, you are your home and you'll come back to that place. We're gonna open the boundaries up a little bit today and see if you want to explore. But we're doing all of this also as I'm thinking about worship in general and worship in this congregation in particular, and I want to bring you up to speed on what I'm thinking about the state of worship here at Mountain Vista, and a little bit about the state of worship in the broader association, our kindred congregations, mostly about here, and probably, full disclosure, mostly about me. So last year I indicated, and it was right about this time also, that I was unsatisfied with the term worship as it applies to what we do together every Sunday. And I vowed that I would find a new word for our weekly enterprise. And so today, I would like to announce I have failed. To this point, I cannot find a word that carries the same weight without the undertones, that conveys meaning without being too constrictive. I have not found a word that is accurate to what we do, that is also not goofy or new agey or superficial. And I hope that is not a commentary on what we are doing here. I hope that what we are doing is not goofy or new agey or superficial, and it certainly doesn't feel that way to me. Rather, I have hugely ambitious hopes for what we are doing here on Sundays. I hope that we are changing lives. I hope that we are sustaining lives. I hope that we are saving lives. I hope that we are bringing meaning to those lives in the forms of novel and also tried and true perspectives that challenge, invite, embrace, and ultimately welcome, care for, and inspire us. I hope that we are making connections and expanding our identity. And in fact, this I can promise you. Actually, let me back up. So these are high hopes, right? And the backbone of these hopes, let's say the hopes are wings. We'll reference a hymn. The hopes are wings, and so we need roots. And our roots, I believe, bottom line, our hopes must be rooted in authenticity. And that's my promise. I will always give you my authenticity. I will not give you artificial enthusiasm or outrage. I will not design ritual or liturgy that is vapid or indulgent. And you can rest assured that if I did, our worship associates would let me know about it. You are in good hands with that group. You may not agree or like what I say or how I design a service, but you have my word, and you have more than my word. You have my molecular, psychological, cultural, spiritual composition that only the authentic will occupy this pulpit when I am in it. And I ask the same of you. That being said, it is true that we may not know if something is authentic until we try it. Some things that feel earnest in design may feel indulgent or make-believe in execution. Conversely, some things that may appear superficial and artificial and imagining or even observing may, I suppose, turn out to be thoroughly and authentically moving when or if we ever try them on for size. So today we are going to try some things on for size. It may turn out that none of them are right for you or for me or for us, and it may turn out that some are. We may be surprised, maybe confirmed, we may crack open a shell we didn't know we had, or it might all suck eggs. We are going to try some new things. We are going to experiment. That's what the summer is for at MVUU, is for experimentation. So let's do that. We are going to try some new things, primarily with our bodies. We are going to try some new things. You think that you've done everything with your body, but we're going to try some new things. I saw some things done with bodies in worship at General Assembly that really bothered me. But then I realized that the things that bothered, which I was, by the way, labeling as inauthentic, might be bothering me because of my own stuff, my own rope. And so now you all get to be the unwitting, though hopefully willing, lab rats of my spiritual psychosis. Doesn't that sound like fun? Isn't that why you came to church this morning? Not really. And yet, here you are. And I've given you enough warning. You know where the door is, and you're still here, so that you've signed the disclosure. And again, no one will die. I promise you that. Or if someone dies, it won't be because of the experiment. I'm pretty sure. Okay, so are you ready? All right. So we're going to play with postures. With postures and with song a little bit. 5 postures, in fact. What we'll do is, after I explain this to you, we'll do our joys and sorrows. Then after that, we will have a sort of chant song called The Healing Rain, which is actually, I think, a popular country song or something that has been adopted by a few churches throughout many different denominations, including every week our Kindred church in Chandler does the Healing Rain singing meditation, and the one in Amato has just started doing it. So we'll play with that, and it's an interesting experience. So we'll do our joys and sorrows, and we'll sing the Healing Rain, the chorus from the Healing Rain. So that's a small experiment. Here comes the larger experiment. All right, I want us to play with form, physical form. I want us to, and I'll cue you. I'll start the song, Katie will join me, then you all will join, and then I'll ask you to rise, and during the first time that we rise, I want you to hold your hands out somewhat like this. This is a receptive, open posture. You're receiving something from what? I don't know. That's up to you. Maybe from each other. Maybe from the Spirit in the room. Okay. Then we'll do this. This is the freakiest one. For me. Not everybody in here is going to be nervous about this, but it hits a couple of my buttons. And it might hit a couple of yours. And some of you preachers are doing this now, and it freaks me out. But I have to say, is it freaking me out? Why? I mean, maybe that's something that I don't know. My sister pointed out to me that I do this, right? She said, when do you do that? I said, oh yeah, football games. Which is, by the way, a religious event, is it not? It's funny, but it's true. So you all probably do this sometimes too. It's exuberant. It's not crazy. It's exuberant. It's happy. It's outward and receptive. We do it when we see maybe a long lost friend. When we're having a happy time, right? A powerful time, anyway. Maybe even an exasperated time. If this really bothers you, just go to exasperation here. So that's number 2. 1, 2. It's not the YMCA. It's not 2. Then, and this is receptive and projecting at the same time, right? But it's all outward also. So the third one we'll do is hold one of your hands over your heart. And if you want to, you could bow your head. And this is both, right? Internal and external, projecting. And if you want to, you could do this, whatever, play with it, experiment on your own. And then the last one, you could fold your arms and be very internal. This is the one that I do naturally. It's still a posture. When my colleagues were doing this, I was doing this. But in fact, there were a couple of folks who were definitely not standing up or doing anything. I was one of them. The other 2 had my exact same haircut and tattoos. You know what I'm saying? You know, we had this, like, this is bollocks. I don't even know what that means, but it felt like that's what we were saying. It's English. But we were like, had this punk rock attitude, and like, no. I mean, it's cool, the song, but I'm not doing that. But this was still a posture, and it was very real and powerful, and evidently favored by 40-something white dudes with tattoos. You know? And I'm just trying to own my sort of cultural heritage and my rope there. It was significant that we all look the same. But you know, this is also a style of prayer. Mormons pray this way. LDS folk pray this way. So it is the who? The Chinese. Did I say that, or did you say that? You did. Okay. I don't know. But this is a posture, and it's my natural posture. So we'll go to this one, and then we'll maybe sing one. You could do whatever you want. You could raise your hands, stay here, sit down. Now, if you get tired, by the way, we're gonna be standing for a little bit. So if you get tired, please do sit down. And then we'll sing one. We'll let it ride at the end. Okay. That's what we're doing. I welcome you to come along with us. I know I'm hitting some buttons. I'm stamping on my own buttons, which is kind of why we're doing this. And it's not meant to be goofy, right? This is an experiment, so we enter into it with honesty and earnestness. We're following it up with some very real joys and sorrows will be preceding us, so we must authentically enter that space as we reflect in song and see what it's like to reflect in body. All right? So with that, we'll do our joys and sorrows.
It's an adaptation of a poem by Jennifer Gray called We Matter. In our community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person in this community has value. Each person's experience matters. We share our sorrows with one another today, knowing that sorrow comes into each person's life, knowing that together we offer comfort. We also share our joys with one another, knowing too that joy comes into all our lives, knowing that together our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Not everything joy or sorrow can be shared openly in community. Some must be shared eye to eye or held in the heart. We further recognize that some do not have voices with which to speak the depth of their pain or the height of their celebration. If you have a joy or sorrow that you would like to share today in a few sentences, please come forward and place a stone in the bowl. If you prefer, you may come forward and silently place a stone in the bowl.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a part of the Pastoral Care Committee. And I'd like to share with you that one of our members, Dina Gentle, will be having breast cancer surgery next week. She's in Wisconsin, and that's, she's at her cottage there. And I learned this through Facebook, so I feel free, since I could have shared it in Facebook with anybody in the whole world, to share this with you. If you'd like her email or any of that information, I wrote it down, and I'll give it to you later. A joy I'd like to share is that Bill and I are going to go next week we hope to see a new baby who was supposed to be born yesterday, one of another grandchild. So we're just really excited. We'll be in Denver for the week. Finally, I have another concern. I mentioned some months ago my cousin's husband was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and he's gone into hospice now. And I'd really ask for your thoughts to be also with her and him, Peggy and Bert. And I have to say, I got a call yesterday. I really need some food, and which we've been trying to, for months, supporting. She has a great social network and all that, but you know what? She doesn't have pastoral care. She doesn't have someone or group that coordinates all this for her. So I always like to plug it in case I know that's who I'll call if I have that kind of a need. Thanks.
And since I skipped this step, I'm going to place some water in the bowl from our water communion.
I'm Judy, and this is not the first time I've been in a weird sort of situation. But anyway, I do have lots of joys, and my main joy is that I'm back. I'm back with the rest of you. And when I left here, I was had health problems, but my son drove me up to Montana, and I recovered up there. And there was even one day in Montana that it was 100 degrees and it was 89 here. So that was worth celebrating. But anyway, I'm happy to be back, and and everything is going just fine. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bob Wallace, and Kathy and I got back a few days ago from a trip to Colorado, which was centered around my niece's wedding. It was a wonderful event, and also brought together 3 of our 4 children with Kathy and me, and that was both wonderful and a reminder that reality continues and we haven't overcome everything. We grow.
My name is Meg Kidwell, and my sorrow is that about 18 days ago I was diagnosed with a herniated lumbar disc. And my joy is that I was only in really bad pain for 2 days, and that I can walk and get around now, and I intend to get better every day.
Well, it's my birthday, so I can say what I want. And I'm glad that Leon recovered from his laparoscopic surgery so beautifully, and everybody remarks about it, including his doctor. Thank you.
I'd like to put a couple of stones in the water, one for my husband. People have been nice enough to ask. He's actually going to work for a couple of weeks in Yuma. He hasn't worked in about 8 months. So this is a good thing, and he left this morning pretty tired, but it pays well, and we're glad he's going. And the other one is for a couple months ago, I had mentioned my daughter's boyfriend who's in Canada and didn't think he'd be able to come back to school here, and he's going to be able to come back. So they're both pretty excited about that, and he'll be back sometime in the middle of August. I'll put some stones in the water for those joys and sorrows that have gone unspoken this morning. Well, shame.
Mhm. So we hold these joys and sorrows on our hearts. And as we do so, we affirm that they're not experiences of isolation, but they are in fact connective. That we feel their resonance in our past and we see their resonances in our future. They are a part of us and we are a part of them. And together, they remind us of our deep interconnectivity. And so we open our empathy to that. Today we will express that in song and in body. The words of the song are, the healing rain is falling down. The healing rain is falling down. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. When I ask you to rise and do the postures, you may wish to close your eyes in order to not be distracted or to not feel judged. Though nobody here, I hope, will judge others. So, are we ready?
We're ready.
So I'll sing it a little bit to get you started. The healing rain is falling down. The healing rain is falling down. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. The healing rain is falling down. The healing rain is falling down. Thank you for that. Maybe we learned something. Anyway, it's different, and doing things differently can open doors and understandings and possibilities that you didn't know you were looking for. I mean, you could feel something, right? So it's into that opening that I would like us to go. I'm going to tell you a couple of experiences at GA that I found formative to my thinking about worship in the future at GA. And one is I saw a great worship with what I thought was an over-enthusiastic response. I saw some worship that felt performative and indulgent. I attended a contemplative practices and worship workshop, and then I saw a very traditional worship that absolutely nailed it. So those are 4 things I want to quickly go over with you. I saw a great worship with an over-enthusiastic response. You know, this is the one that I thought was inauthentic, but who am I to judge? Sometimes you can't explain something, but you know it when you see it, right? And then evidently sometimes you think you know it when you see it and you really don't get it. And I don't know quite where on that little spectrum I was falling on that time, but somewhere. And, you know, it reminded me, we went, as a youth director, I took our kids a long time ago when we were in Austin to a Pentecostal church. And this is a massive mega church, and they had the whole kit going. And I mean, cameras on cranes that were swinging around, and very enthusiastic, not my scene, but enthusiastic worship. And some people you can tell were doing their thing because they thought that's what they were supposed to be doing. And you could tell, you could just tell. I don't know how you could tell, but it seemed like I could tell anyway. And then there was this old fella who got up out of his chair during the whatever was happening. I don't remember what was happening. And he ran, and this is a big place, you know. He ran around it. And he's like, 70, 60, 90 something, you know. And he was running and dancing all the way around, and somebody got up and chased him. But they were both incredibly moved. That was totally real. I had no doubt that guy was. And at the time, I remember saying, if I can get a Unitarian Universalist to do that. Of course, here it would be much easier. You should do it. If you're going to do it here before we move, because it's probably a smaller sanctuary. It would be easier. But that guy was doing it for reals, I didn't agree with the theology at all, but what he was doing was a real experience for him, and I did not question his investment and his authenticity in that. So, you know it when you see it. Anyway, I felt like I wasn't seeing it, but having done what we just did, I'm rewriting this portion of my sermon right now. Because that felt like something. So I don't know what to do with that. What I know that I was seeing, though, regardless of whether I thought it was authentic or not, was a real yearning on the part of ministers and on the part of lay leaders that were attending GA. I saw a yearning for something experiential and sensual, something that you could sense in worship, an experience of worship. I saw that yearning. I feel that yearning. Okay, so then I also saw some worship that felt performative and indulgent, and out of respect to colleagues, I don't really want to talk about that too much. But it was not my favorite worship, and it did feel like performance. And there is a place for performance in religious worship, but it's a very delicate balance. And I think the more over the top, if I ever do performance, I will probably be wearing a mask or a costume, really, because that's where the performance is. So we know that I'm inhabiting something other than my authentic self, right? Then I attended a contemplative practices and worship workshop, and this was spectacular. They led us through some chanting in the Taizé tradition, which is a Christian monastic order in France. And their services tend to be just scripture prayer and a heavy dose of chanting. So we did some of their chants, which we borrowed from the Taizé tradition. But like many of the hymns that we sing in our congregations today, we adapted the old tune and sensibilities and theologies with lyrics more reflective of our own diverse theological perspectives, all right? So they were Taizé tradition, but UU sensibility and lyrics, particularly lyrics. So there's 80 or 150 people in a convention center, right? Convention center workshop. And we were just sort of sampling stuff, a little smorgasbord of Taizé. And it was one of the most moving and opening and sensational, sensual worships that I've ever been to. Yeah, Sally was there, you were there, Katie was there. We all, isn't that weird? Like, almost, were you all there? No. Well, you missed something. They were doing other important work. So what we find, I think, is that chanting, which we've been doing a little bit more of every Sunday, chanting, the lyrics are secondary to the vibrational repetition. Right? I told you earlier that I wasn't going to sound new agey, and I just did. If you dig the vibrational repetition. But that's what it is. It's a vibrational repetition. You're singing these words to this tune with this intention, and it's doing something in your body because of the vibrational repetition. But it's truly powerful. It was opening. And it was absolutely out of our heads, right? As it's not an intellectual exercise, thank God. I'm all for intellectual pursuit and character building, but I think we do that pretty darn well in Unitarian Universalists already. We don't do heart and body as well, although we're moving into it, right? Sometimes we overshoot because we're newbies. We don't know how to do it. So we overshoot sometimes, but we're working in that direction, right? And this really nailed it to me. And, this chanting stuff, right? It touches something ancient and pre-cultural and possibly pre-linguistic. And I realized that I said it was, not intellectual, and then I just said pre-linguistic at the same time. But, we do intellect like Babe Ruth does baseball, right? We don't have a trouble with that. We're totally ripped on that side of our spiritual lives. And intellectual pursuit is a spiritual exercise. Make no mistake about that. But the other side of our spiritual life is starved and atrophied, and we end up limping around our religion for the past 50 years with one side massive and the other side withered. So chanting develops that other side. It creates a space. It doesn't have to make a claim on you theologically or even philosophically. It's vibrational repetition. So that was blazing in my mind, all that newness, and then I went to the tradition, the service of the living tradition. Very traditional hymn sandwich, they call it, the hymn sandwich worship. And it was awesome. To go from all that newness to the old was interesting. The old, what we do Sundays and the hymn sandwich thing can kind of seem boring because it's so familiar. But to see it done well, especially in the context of all this other, some successful, some unsuccessful sort of experimentation, was really powerful. The service of the living tradition for me was really powerful. This mix of song and word and offertory, climaxing with a sermon, was just stunningly solid and powerful and energizing. And so that too was a lesson for me. So the upshot of all of this is that my hope is to bring more contemplative elements into our Sunday services. And in fact, I would like to begin, and I'm just at the very beginning stages of this. I haven't talked to all the people that I need to talk to yet. If you're one of those people that I haven't talked to yet that I need to talk to, don't be mad, just email me. I am hoping to introduce a second service earlier in the morning. That is going to be strictly contemplative, which means lots of chanting, a couple hymns, a lot of silence, and a very brief homily. And then we'll still offer this traditional hymn sandwich, solid, powerful, hopefully, service. They will be different, but they will feature more or less the same message, right? So if you want to double dip, you can double dip. If you want to just attend one, I hope that your spiritual needs, I think, will still be met, I hope. And as we move toward that, what we're going to do is once a month, one Sunday a month, we're going to do what I am calling, not really accurately or a quasi-contemplative service. So a hymn sandwich with a little bit more silence, a little bit more chanting. And we'll do that once a month to give you a taste of what contemplative worship is. And we'll do that once a month, even through January, so that when our snowbirds come back, they get a taste of that, and maybe they say, I love that. I'll go to the contemplative service. But I think it'll be enough like this service that hopefully it won't be too foreign feeling for those of you who just prefer a nice hymn sandwich, which is good. So again, we are an evolving tradition. We are in our first century. And in that first century, we have gone through some really interesting changes, right? Revision is our cornerstone, or at least it's one cornerstone, and I think authenticity is another cornerstone, and they certainly feed each other, they work with each other. So whatever it is that we do in the future, it will be evolving and authentic. So let's go.